I watched the champagne flutes catch the afternoon light as 250 guests raised their glasses. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my own, the crystal cool against my palm. Across the elegant ballroom of the Harbor View estate, I could see my daughter Rachel glowing in her wedding dress, her fingers intertwined with those of her new husband, Marcus. And standing beside Marcus, microphone in hand, was the man who had destroyed my life 23 years ago. Jonathan Reeves, Marcus's father, about to give his father of the groom speech. He cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen, what a beautiful day this has been." His voice was smooth, practiced, the voice of a man accustomed to being heard. "I want to thank everyone who made this celebration possible, the caterers, the florist, the wedding planner who worked tirelessly." He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the room until it landed on me, seated alone at a table near the back. And of course, I must acknowledge Rachel's mother, sitting there in the corner. You know, it takes a special kind of woman to show up to her own daughter's wedding in a dress from what is that, Target? Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not everyone laughed, but enough did. I felt my face burn. "But seriously," Jonathan continued, his smile never wavering, "I suppose we should be grateful. After all, someone had to clean the Evergreen Towers apartments where my family used to invest. It's just amusing that the cleaning lady's daughter would marry into our family. Life has a sense of humor, doesn't it?" The laughter was louder this time. I saw Rachel's face crumple, saw Marcus put a protective arm around her shoulders. And I saw something else, the way Marcus's jaw tightened, the way his eyes met mine across the room with an expression I couldn't quite read. I stood up. My chair scraped against the polished floor, loud in the sudden quiet. "Mr. Reeves," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. "You're right. I did clean apartments at Evergreen Towers. Building C, specifically. I was there the night of March 14th, 23 years ago." Jonathan's smile faltered, just for a moment. "I was there," I continued, reaching into my small purse and pulling out a manila envelope I'd carried with me for over 2 decades, "when you cut the support cables on the scaffolding at the construction site next door. When you sabotaged the safety equipment that killed 12 men the next morning, including my husband." The ballroom erupted in gasps and shocked murmurs. Jonathan's face had gone white, and I have the photographs to prove it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back to the beginning, to the night that changed everything. 23 years ago, I was Margaret Hayes, 38 years old, working 3 jobs to make ends meet while my husband Daniel worked construction. We lived in a small apartment in the Riverside district of Portland, Oregon, and we were happy. Not wealthy, not even comfortable really, but happy. Daniel would come home smelling of sawdust and concrete, would lift our 5-year-old Rachel into the air and spin her around until she shrieked with laughter. I cleaned offices at night, banks, law firms, medical buildings. It was lonely work, but it paid better than day shifts, and it meant I could be home when Rachel got back from kindergarten. One of my regular jobs was Evergreen Towers, a luxury apartment complex near the waterfront. I'd arrive at 10 p.m., after all the residents had retired for the evening, and clean the common areas, the gym, the lobby. Building C backed onto a construction site where they were putting up a new high-rise. Daniel's company, Riverside Construction, was doing the foundation work. I'd sometimes see him from the windows as I cleaned, operating the crane or directing the concrete trucks, even that late at night. They were on a tight deadline, he told me. The developer was pushing hard to stay on schedule. That developer was Jonathan Reeves. On the night of March 14th, I was cleaning the fitness center on the ground floor of Building C. It was almost midnight. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the construction site, lit up by work lights. Most of the crew had gone home, but there was still someone moving around near the scaffolding. I didn't think much of it at first. Sometimes supervisors stayed late to check the setup for the next day's work. But something about the way this person moved caught my attention. Furtive, quick, not the methodical pace of someone doing an inspection. I turned off the lights in the gym so I could see better without being seen. The figure was wearing a dark coat and a baseball cap, face obscured. He was doing something to the scaffolding cables, something with a tool that glinted in the work lights. I should have called out, should have gone to investigate. But I was a cleaning lady, alone in a building at midnight, and this was clearly someone who didn't want to be seen. So instead, I did something else. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. The image quality wasn't great. Phones in those days didn't have the cameras they do now, but I could make out the figure, the scaffolding, the tool in his hands. I took a dozen shots from different angles as he moved from one support cable to another, doing something to each one, weakening them, I would realize later, making them just fragile enough that they would hold through the night but fail under the weight of 12 workers the next morning. Then he turned, and for just a moment, the work lights caught his face. I recognized him immediately. I'd seen his picture in the society pages of the Portland Tribune, seen him at charity galas that I'd cleaned up after. Jonathan Reeves, the wealthy developer, the man who owned half the waterfront. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone. What was he doing, sabotaging his own construction site? He finished whatever he was doing and left quickly, disappearing into the shadows beyond the work lights. I stood frozen in that darkened gym for a full 5 minutes, my mind racing. This couldn't be what it looked like. There had to be an explanation. Maybe he was fixing something. Maybe I'd misunderstood what I was seeing. I finished my shift in a daze, driving home as the sky began to lighten. Daniel was already up, making coffee before his 6 a.m. start time. "You look exhausted," he said, kissing my forehead. "Rough night?" I almost told him. The words were right there, but something held me back. What if I was wrong? What if I accused a powerful man of something terrible based on grainy phone photos taken through a window at midnight? Who would believe me, a cleaning lady, over Jonathan Reeves? "Just tired," I said. "Long shift." Daniel left for work at 5:30. Rachel was still asleep. I sat at our small kitchen table, staring at the photos on my phone, trying to decide what to do. At 7:43 a.m., my phone rang. It was Daniel's supervisor, his voice shaking. "Mrs. Hayes, there's been an accident." The scaffolding collapsed. Daniel was, "I'm so sorry." He didn't make it. 11 other men died that morning when the scaffolding gave way. The investigation lasted 3 months. The official conclusion was that Riverside Construction had cut corners on safety, had used substandard equipment to save money. The company was fined. The owner went to prison. Families got settlements that barely covered funeral costs. And Jonathan Reeves? He expressed his deep condolences, promised to implement stricter oversight on future projects, and emerged with his reputation intact. He'd trusted the wrong construction company, the narrative went. He was a victim too. I knew the truth. I had the photos on my phone, photos that proved Jonathan Reeves had sabotaged that scaffolding himself. But I was paralyzed by fear and grief. Who would listen to me? Who would believe me over a man with money and power and lawyers? And if I came forward, if I tried to speak up, what would happen to Rachel? I was a single mother now, barely holding on. I couldn't risk losing my jobs, couldn't risk a lawsuit that would destroy us financially. So I backed up those photos to a CD-ROM. I put them in a manila envelope, and I kept quiet. The years passed slowly. I worked my 3 jobs, raised Rachel alone, watched her grow from a little girl into a remarkable young woman. She was smart, driven, nothing like the bitter, broken person I sometimes feared I was becoming. She got a scholarship to Portland State, studied business, graduated with honors. And then, 2 years ago, she came home for Thanksgiving with a young man named Marcus Reeves. I knew the last name, of course. But Portland was a big city, and Reeves wasn't that uncommon a name. It wasn't until Marcus mentioned that his father was in real estate development that my stomach dropped. "You okay, Mom?" Rachel had asked. "You look pale." "Fine." I'd managed. Just tired. I watched them fall in love over the next year. Marcus was kind, thoughtful, nothing like what I imagined Jonathan Reeves' son would be. He worked as a construction safety inspector for the city, ironic that, and he clearly adored Rachel. They moved in together, started talking about marriage, and I said nothing. What could I say? That his father had killed 12 men, including her father, to collect insurance money when the project failed. That I had proof but had been too afraid to use it for 20 years? That I'd let the real killer go free while an innocent business owner went to prison? The guilt ate at me. But the fear was stronger. Marcus proposed on Rachel's birthday last year. She called me crying happy tears. Mom, I know Dad can't be here to walk me down the aisle, but I wish he could have met Marcus. I think he would have liked him. I thought about Daniel every day, but in that moment, the pain was so sharp I could barely breathe. The wedding planning began, and that's when I met Jonathan Reeves for the first time since that night 23 years ago. We were at Marcus and Rachel's apartment for an engagement dinner. Jonathan arrived late, breezing in with the confidence of someone who'd never faced consequences for anything in his life. He was 67 now, silver-haired, distinguished-looking in an expensive suit. "You must be Rachel's mother," he said, shaking my hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Margaret, is it? Rachel tells me you work in building maintenance?" "I'm a custodial supervisor now," I said evenly, "at Oregon Health Sciences University." "How wonderful. It's so important, the work that service people do. We couldn't function without you." The condescension dripped from every word. Rachel didn't seem to notice, busy in the kitchen with Marcus, but I saw it clearly. To Jonathan Reeves, I was invisible, forgettable, just another working-class person far beneath his notice. He had no idea who I was, no idea that I'd been there that night, no memory of the cleaning lady who might have seen something through the windows of Building C. Over the next months, as the wedding planning intensified, Jonathan made his feelings about the match increasingly clear. Never directly, he was too smooth for that, but in small comments, subtle digs about Rachel's background, about her education at a state school instead of an Ivy League university, about how different she was from Marcus's previous girlfriends from good families. Marcus noticed. He'd defend Rachel fiercely, which would lead to arguments with his father. But Rachel would smooth things over, desperate for approval, wanting so badly to be accepted into this family that had everything hers had lacked. It broke my heart. But still, I said nothing. 3 months before the wedding, I was cleaning my office at the hospital when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mrs. Hayes? This is Detective Sarah Chen with Portland PD. I'm reopening the investigation into the Riverside Tower collapse from 23 years ago. I was hoping I could ask you a few questions." My heart nearly stopped. "Why are you reopening it?" "New evidence has come to light suggesting the scaffolding failure might not have been accidental. I understand you were working at Evergreen Towers that night. I wanted to know if you saw or heard anything unusual." This was it, my chance to finally tell the truth. I opened my mouth to speak. Then I thought about Rachel. Just 3 months away from her wedding. Thought about her happiness with Marcus, the life she was building. If I spoke up now, if I revealed what I knew, it would destroy everything. The wedding would be called off. Rachel would hate me for keeping this secret for so long, for only revealing it when it would hurt her most. "I'm sorry, Detective," I heard myself say. "I didn't see anything that night. I wish I could help." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. "Are you sure? Even the smallest detail might be helpful." "I'm sure. I'm sorry." I hung up and sat in the dark office, crying for the first time in years. I was a coward. I'd been a coward 23 years ago, and I was still a coward now. 2 weeks before the wedding, Rachel came to my small apartment in Gresham. She'd been distant lately, stressed with the final preparations. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd sat with those photos all those years ago, and she took my hand. "Mom, I need to tell you something. Jonathan has been difficult about the seating arrangements. He wants you at a table in the back, away from the wedding party. He says it's because there's limited space up front for family, but I know it's because he thinks you don't belong there." "Rachel, it's fine. I don't need to be. It's not fine. You're my mother. You raised me alone. You worked yourself to exhaustion to give me a good life. You deserve to be in the front row, not hidden in a corner." I saw the pain in her eyes, the constant battle between loving Marcus and feeling diminished by his family. And I saw something else, a determination that reminded me of Daniel. "You know what? I told Jonathan I'm putting you at the main family table, right next to me and Marcus. If he doesn't like it, he can skip his own son's wedding." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt sick, because I knew Jonathan Reeves. I knew what men like him did when they felt challenged. I was right to worry. The night before the wedding, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Jonathan threw a fit about the seating. He said terrible things. Marcus is furious. They're barely speaking. But we agreed to move you to a side table to keep the peace. Just for tomorrow. I'm so sorry. I texted back that it was fine, that I understood. But I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at my ceiling, thinking about Daniel, about the 12 men who died, about 23 years of silence. At 3 a.m., I got up and found that manila envelope, dusty now, tucked in the back of my closet. I opened it and looked at the photos, grainy and faded but still clear enough. Jonathan Reeves, his face caught in the work lights, a bolt cutter in his hands. I'd carried this secret for 23 years. I'd let it poison me, turn me into someone who was afraid of her own shadow. I'd watched a good man go to prison for crimes he didn't commit. I'd let my daughter's father's murderer walk free. No more. I put the envelope in my purse. I didn't have a plan, exactly, but I knew I was done being silent. Which brings us to the wedding, to the ballroom at Harbor View Estate, to Jonathan Reeves standing with a microphone calling me a cleaning lady in front of 250 guests. When you cut the support cables on the scaffolding at the construction site next door, I continued, my voice growing stronger. When you sabotaged the safety equipment that killed 12 men the next morning, including my husband, I pulled the photos from the envelope, and Marcus was suddenly there, taking them from my hands, not to hide them, but to look at them. His face had gone very still. What is this? He said quietly, looking at his father. This is ridiculous, Jonathan blustered. This woman is clearly deranged, making wild accusations. These photos are date-stamped March 14th, 23 years ago, Marcus said, studying them, the night before the Riverside Tower collapse. Dad, why are you in these photos with bolt cutters at a construction site at midnight? The room had gone completely silent. Every eye was on Jonathan Reeves. I was doing an inspection, obviously. This is clearly some kind of attempted extortion. I work in construction safety, Marcus said, his voice still that same quiet, dangerous tone. I know what sabotage looks like. And I know why you were always so interested in my career, why you always wanted to know about safety inspections and investigation procedures. He looked at me. Why didn't you come forward with these before? Because I was afraid, I said simply. I was a widow with a 5-year-old daughter and 3 minimum wage jobs. Who would believe me over him? And later, when you and Rachel fell in love, I was afraid of hurting her. I was afraid of destroying her happiness. Mom, Rachel said, and she was crying. Why didn't you tell me? Because I'm a coward, I said. Because I've been a coward for 23 years. But I'm done being afraid. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'm calling Detective Chen. She's been trying to reopen this case. You can't seriously believe this nonsense, Jonathan said, but his voice had lost its confidence. Marcus, I'm your father. This woman is nobody, a cleaning lady with a grudge. My father-in-law, Marcus said coldly, is Daniel Hayes, who died when I was 4 years old in a scaffolding collapse that was ruled an accident. My father-in-law is the man in the wedding photos Rachel showed me, the man she talks about with so much love. You? You're just Jonathan Reeves. And you're going to pay for what you did. The wedding dissolved into chaos after that. Guests standing, talking over each other. Jonathan trying to leave, stopped by Marcus's uncle, a lawyer, as it turned out, who'd also lost someone in that collapse. Rachel holding me as I shook with 23 years of suppressed grief, finally breaking free. Detective Chen arrived within an hour. She took the photos, took my statement, and arrested Jonathan Reeves on the spot. It turned out Marcus had been working with her for months, feeding her information about his father's business practices, suspicions about the collapse that had killed his father's business partner, a partner who'd threatened to expose cost-cutting measures. I knew something was wrong, Marcus told Rachel and me later, after Jonathan had been taken away. I've known for years that the official story didn't make sense. When Detective Chen reopened the case, and I started looking into it myself, I found evidence of insurance fraud, of payoffs to inspectors. But I didn't have proof of the sabotage itself. He looked at me. Thank you for being brave enough to finally come forward. I should have done it 23 years ago, I said. Maybe, he said. But you did it now. That's what matters. The wedding was postponed, of course. We held a small ceremony 3 months later, after the initial media frenzy had died down, just family and close friends, in the garden behind Rachel and Marcus's new house. Marcus walked Rachel down the aisle, and I sat in the front row, where I belonged. Jonathan Reeves was convicted of 12 counts of manslaughter and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. The construction company owner who'd gone to prison was exonerated and released. The families of the 12 men who died finally got justice and substantial settlements from Jonathan's assets. Detective Chen told me later that my photos had broken the case wide open, leading to evidence of 2 other accidents at Reeves' development projects. Jonathan would spend the rest of his life in prison. I wish I could say I felt triumphant, or that coming forward had healed all my wounds. The truth is more complicated. I still feel guilty for waiting so long. I still wonder what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to speak up when it mattered. But I also know this. I spent 23 years being invisible, being dismissed, being afraid. Standing up in that ballroom, pulling out that envelope, finally telling the truth, it didn't erase those years, but it changed something fundamental in me. I'm 61 years old now. I retired from my custodial supervisor position last year. Rachel and Marcus have given me a beautiful granddaughter named Daniela after her grandfather. I hold her and tell her stories about the father she'll never meet, the good man who worked hard and loved his family and deserved so much better than what he got. And I tell her that it's never too late to tell the truth, that being afraid doesn't make you weak, but staying silent forever does. That sometimes the cleaning lady in the corner is the one with all the power, if she's brave enough to use it. I kept that manila envelope for 23 years, waiting for the right moment. It turned out the right moment was the one when I finally stopped being afraid of what I might lose and started thinking about what I'd already lost by staying silent. Jonathan Reeves thought he could dismiss me, insult me, erase me. He thought I was nobody. He was wrong.